Happy Halloween. Welcome to HES's webinar. Today we are going to be, we're very happy to have Daniel Partridge, our engineer here, and he's going to be taking an overview of the Fast Rack ground mount installation. This is specific to the two-tier. That's some really cool stuff that they've developed. And if you have questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them in. We will pose them at the end of the webinar. And other than that, Dan, thank you very much for being here today and presenting on your ground mount.
And thank you very much, Cameron. First I would just like to start out and say thank you to all the attendees. It looks like we've got a pretty good sized group attending today's webinar. And I'm just going to briefly go through some of the ground mount installation and some of the different options that people have and different tools that we've put together to hopefully make your lives a little bit easier with your projects as they come up. Again, thanks for attending. To start, topics I want to cover today. Oddly enough, it's the beginning of a ground mount installation, or any project really, happens well before the product is ordered. It starts with the site visit and actually figuring out what you're going to be installing and how you're going to be installing it. From there, we're going to talk a little bit about our online component generator. It's a tool that some of you know about, and I'd love it if more of you did. It's going to make your lives a lot easier when it comes to quoting projects. I'm just going to briefly go through that, and then of course different installation and some of the different aspects of that we want to address and hopefully make you guys aware of or refresh. And finally, of course, as Cameron said, we're going to open the floor up to questions, and we'll see what we get from that. I know we've allotted an hour for this webinar. I'm hoping to be talking for about 35-40 minutes. Don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. And then after that, again, we'll see where the questions go and how long it goes from there. So getting started, the site visit. One thing that we I guess we don't see enough of, or people sometimes underestimate, is the pre-site. And it's the idea of actually taking a look, doing a little bit of homework before getting to your customer site and getting an idea of what you're getting into. I know a lot of people are getting on board with either different GIS websites. ArcGIS is a great site, or Google Earth, just to get an idea of what the roofs they're looking for on flush roof installations. But this is also obviously applicable for ground installs or ground mounted projects. So a great way to start. Of course, if you've got a farmer's field, maybe they don't want to fill the whole thing with solar. So how much are they planning on putting in? What kind of budget are they looking for? All stuff that we're all familiar with, but something to keep in mind before traveling a couple hours out of your way to go visit a site and then finding out that they really only want to install a 1 or 2 kilowatt system. And that could have been takes a lot of your time that could have been focused elsewhere. Anyways, after determining, or I guess a little bit of vetting with the pre-site visit, of course, it is the actual visit itself and confirming that what you saw on your Google Earth images is actually what you've got when you get there, and confirming that the array that you want to that you and the customer have discussed is actually going to fit on the land, and how you're going to wire it, what trenching may have to happen for running back to your AC panels or to the electrical service. So all this, of course, is something to consider early on before product is acquired. So after the site visit is completed and it's time to get into actually you and your customer have agreed on the size of the system you're looking for. Next is our online generator, component generator. This is actually something that Cameron, the marketing department, and myself have been working on, which is designed again to make it quicker for you guys to get quotes together for the materials that you need without spending exorbitant amounts on extra components. Some of you have been around for a while installing our old 2-tier ground mount 8s. If you ever needed to install 12 modules, you ended up buying 2 8s and wasting a whole bunch of material. So this is what we did is we redesigned our whole ground mount system. to be a modular collection of leg kits and rail kits that pretty much have different configurations depending on how many modules you're looking at. For this webinar, I just put together a mythical 20 module layout, and so into our ground mount generating tool. The website, of course, as you see, is at the top. You can we can send that out after this webinar for everyone to take a look at. But once you've filled in the basic information, selected the module that you're going to be using, hit the continue button, and you get a really nice, simple output screen. From this, of course, you've got the module you've selected and the number of modules that you input, and then what generates from this is the number of leg kits and the number of rail kits that you're going to need to purchase to build this mount. In addition to that, it also gives you an indicator of how many penetrations you're going to be using, and that's going to be your points of contact with either your ground, your foundation, your piers, helical piles, whatever it is that you're mounting to. That's the number of points you're going to be contacting to the ground. We're going to get into that a little bit later on when we talk about foundations. But also, it gives you a quick calculation of the width of the array. That's going to help you just provide a little bit of a back check to make sure that you haven't underestimated or overestimated the size of the array, and to confirm that it is still going to fit. Now, one of the last things, and this is something that we've put together for most of your two-tier ground mount layouts for anything under 30 modules. We've put them online, made them available to you guys simply by clicking click here for the layout sheets. You're going to get it's a 3 or 4 page document, which is going to have both a 72 cell and a 60 cell module layout. Pardon me. With these, so sheet 1, sheet 2 of the document, this shows you the overall width of the array, where your feet are going to be placed east to west, and also the distance between the front feet and the back feet of your ground mount. You'll notice what we've planned is for a 10-foot on-center spacing for all of our rows. Again, makes your life easier when you're putting either your piers in or your concrete foundations. Always going to be multiples of 10. And then that 7'6" distance between the front leg and back leg is the same between both the 60 and 72 cell module layouts. So simple, easy to use foundation guide or layout design. With that, I mentioned on the previous slide that there are times, they're under 30 module layouts, we have most of those available online. We also have some of the layouts that we've come across that people have asked. I think we've got a 36, a 40, 42, that kind of idea. And as you, the installers, come across projects and you need layouts, when you ask your sales rep for those, we're going to put them together as a package similar to what you see here, and we're going to be putting them into the generator so that they're available for future use as well. The last page of these documents, what it's going to be is as you see here, it's the back brace orientation. This is simply to help you figure out how the back braces are going to be located on your install. It's not always going to be an X in between each set of legs. It's going to be this chevron type pattern with either an X in the middle or just a continued chevron, depending on if it's an even or odd number of legs. You'll also notice on this diagram there is detail A in the bottom center of it, and what that is the location for the L feet which hold the cross braces based on the height on the back legs. So as you see, it's from the top of the back leg to the top of the L foot. Just a nice simple measurement so that you can pre-build these on site and of course speed up your install time. On that, I'm going to go forward, and so let's talk a little bit about the components that come with your ground mount leg and rail kits. So the rails, I apologize for this image, but in there is actually the end clamps, the mid clamps, and your grounding lugs, as well as your 13-foot HD rails. So every time you're going to order a quantity of one of the FR-GMX rail kits, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get your 4 rails, your 8 end clamps, 16 mids, and 4 splice kits. You'll notice that that's 4 extra mids and 4 splice kits that you may not need if you're only installing 4 modules. But if your system does go beyond a total of 8 modules, if you look at 10, 20, and onwards, you're going to want those splices, and of course you're going to be replacing a set of your ends with mid clamps. So modular design, you can keep growing as your system requires. The other part of this is the FR-GMX Leg Kit. So this includes, of course, the front leg, the back leg, the feet. That's going to be the feet that interface between whatever your foundation is and the legs. As well, you're going to get your pivot plates and all the necessary fasteners to put this together. In addition to that, you will also get a 13-foot UL rail, which is the cross brace that we were showing at in detail on the previous slide there, which is used to help prevent help resist any side loading that may happen to the array. With that, that's the foundation. That's the key to the Fast Track 2-tier ground mount system. And so let's now go into what we need to do for an install. So when getting to a site, of course, different sites have different requirements based on what the soil or ground condition is, or what your customer wants. We're finding a lot of people are really interested in, well, as off the shelf as you can get, which is going to be a preformed concrete block, I guess commonly referred to as Lego blocks. They're either 2 foot by 2 foot by 4 or 2.5 by 2.5 by 5. Most of your concrete distributors will have these on site. They're somewhere usually between 50 and 100 bucks per unit, and usually those distributors also have flatbed trucks with high abs on them, so which can be rented out on a by-hour basis, and drive to your site, locate these blocks as per your layout diagram provided previously. And there you go. You've got a simple, quick, out-of-the-box foundation. Depending on your soil conditions, depending on, again, what you're looking at on your site, helical piles are also a great solution. Typically, you're going to be looking at a helical pile supplier, unless you have your own welding shop or fabrication shop. But there's a number of them in Canada. Off the top of my head, I know Postex one, which is kind of a global or presence across the country, but there's tons more. There's tons around, and yeah, what they'll do is they have different specifications based on the diameter of the pole being used, and of course the diameter of the blade, and so there's the screw pile supplier or installer. They're going to be the ones that are going to specify the proper one based on the loading information which we can provide. And then of course the last one is the idea of the concrete or piers of some sort, concrete piers usually, with a top beam, usually a built up wood beam, or depending on what's readily available. We have seen, of course, I-beams. That gets a little bit pricey, but there's plenty of options available on that one. And we do have a generic concrete pier package, which we have available. It's generic. It has a generic soil condition and capacity, so it's something to get you in the right direction, but may not be applicable directly for your site. There's many other different ways of providing a foundation for ground mounts, but these are the 3 pretty common ones. We've also seen people having to drill straight into bedrock and put in epoxy and threaded rods. It's also a potential option that's come up a couple of times. yeah, so that's the basics of some of the foundation options we see, and again, quite commonly the concrete blocks are popular amongst most of our installers. With that, continue on looking at the concrete blocks. With the layout package that we've provided previously, this here shows nice and clearly where you're going to be wanting to attach the feet to your blocks, and then it's a matter of locating the blocks accordingly. As you see, 7'6" on center from north to south. Gentleman here in the picture, he's measuring out the spacing between the front row and back row of feet, and then of course there'd be multiple sets of these blocks, 10 feet either east or west of where he's sitting. With that, on the laying out the feet or the placement of these, I was recently talking to one of our installers about their method of marking these appropriately and quickly, and he had some really great insight as far as the taking out any height issues that may happen if you don't have perfectly level ground, and the idea with that was to use something like a threaded rod or a wedge anchor that had some vertical thread extending past the concrete blocks, and using that exposed thread as a self-leveling method. As well, he mentioned that he found it a lot easier to locate his feet by actually making a cardboard template of what the 2 feet look like together, and using that on his blocks to mark where he's going to be putting in his wedge anchors. Less commonly used, and I think mostly due to price, is Tapcons. You can buy some pretty heavy duty Tapcon fasteners. They're a concrete screw. Doesn't really offer any vertical adjustment to it, but it is an option that's out there if you do have a nice level and graded site. Pardon me, just going to grab a quick bit of water here for a second. All right, continuing on. Once you've got the blocks placed, you've got your feet located and secured down to the blocks, it's time to actually start getting the rest of the mount put together. Now, one of the things that we've talked about before amongst the staff at HES and on different webinars is that prep beforehand is going to save you just tons of time. Quickly looking at it, on a flush roof system, every minute of time spent on the ground prepping, building installs, or sub-assemblies, it can save you, up to 5 minutes on a roof. That's a pretty generous number, but you are saving monstrous times working on the ground. This happens with the ground mounts. If you can do any pre-assembly ahead of time, you're not spending so much time up on a ladder. You're saving time. You're not repositioning your workstation as you go. So with that, this is where you can save a bunch of time on your install, which is pre-assembling your legs. With the layout package provided from the generator, we've located on here, we've provided values for locating your L feet for your panel rails based on the top of the front leg. Nice, simple, easy to hit marks. This is for a 60 cell layout. A 72 cell has slightly different dimensions, obviously due to the larger module. But this makes your life easy, having your L feet pre-installed before the front legs are raised, or before the legs are raised. In addition to this, locating your pivot plate based on the tilt angle that you want. That's a nice and quick and easy one, and attaching the back leg. So you're actually just installing an A-frame. If we found that using this method, as much pre-assembly before we get these up in the air as possible, made our demo install actually quite quick and quite easy. For those of you whom I haven't met, I'm the guy in green in the photos here. Onwards, the the cross braces. I mentioned before that each of the leg kits comes with a 13-foot UL rail, which is used for lateral support on the array. As you see here, we've got 2 sets of legs, we've got 2 cross rails. Because this demonstration block that we're building was only designed to hold 8 modules, that's why we've got the cross, as opposed to the chevron pattern mentioned earlier. With that, one thing to keep in mind is you want to keep your legs, you want to keep them parallel. You want to make sure that nothing's been shifted, nothing has shifted, there's no lateral movement on your legs. So when you're putting in your spread cross braces, this is a good time. Just measure the distance between the bottom of your front legs, sorry, and the top. And those numbers should be the same distance. Anybody who's got a bit of a carpentry background is also going to probably do measure from corner to corner. That's a nice way to make sure that everything's nice and square. It's a little bit harder once the legs are up in the air, but something to consider. All right. Mentioned before, the detail A on the last page of the layout layout diagrams has the height that we want to locate the L feet, which are going to hold those cross braces. Again, from the top of the back leg down, nice easy marks to hit, and really reachable from ground level. Continuing on. So once we've got the cross braces installed, it's time to look at putting in the panel rails. Sorry, I'm going to jump back a slide here, but with the putting in the panel rails, and since we've done the prep work beforehand of installing the L feet on the front legs while they were on the ground, installing of the panel rails is quick and easy. Simply locate the rails in place, tighten them down, and of course making sure that they're centered or located based on on the layout of your system. Pardon me. The next one, same as any of your flush roof installs, which we're all probably quite familiar with. Now that we've got panel rails in place, it's the same as a rooftop install. It's time to look at installing your end clamps, your mid clamps, marking the center of your array so that everything's balanced, putting in your optimizers and your microinverters, and of course starting to work on your wire routing. Good part of ground mount over your flush roof is you can actually work underneath to tidy up some loose ends if need be, but of course we'd prefer to address those before we get too far along on any install. As you can see, the image on the top left here, Ariana, one of our students this term, and I are marking the center of the rails, so we know where the first set of mid clamps are going to go, and we've decided to build out from there to again make sure that our array is centered and can proceed evenly and quickly. With that, once you've got the first modules in, of course, there's going to be some work with ladder work getting the top rows in place, but it does go by quite quickly and easily. One thing we have noticed, similar to your flush roof installs, of course, is providing a little bit of a gap between the upper row of modules and the lower row, and trying to keep that even. It's an old trick, but I think a lot of people use it and love it, which is just simply putting 2 mid clamps between the upper row of modules and the lower row to help provide a uniform spacing across, and then just knock those clamps out as you go along. It's kind of a nice little trick if you're not using it. Helps makes the array nice and easy to level. All right, I realize I've gone pretty quickly through this, so what I'm going to do is we're just going to quickly show you. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, hold on, let's see if I can get this video to work for us here. Pardon me for a moment. slowly starting up. So it is a time-lapse photo, which was a little quicker than most people wanted, but a good indicator. We're showing a little bit of ground preparation work happening, and there we go. Legs go up nice and simple, cross braces, and of course the panel rails followed by your panels. There you go, 2 kilowatts, under 30 seconds, nice and easy. I think everybody can hit that mark without any problems. Bear with me for a moment here. I'm just going to get back into the webinar here. Or not. Okay, while this is catching up with us, there we go. Yeah, obviously there's quite a learning curve with getting these going. The first systems always take a little bit longer than normal, but we now have installers out there that are in a day from bare ground to a 5K installs done quick and easily. Of course, depending on crew size and experience. With that, I have gone much quicker than I intended on this, so I do apologize. Before I open the floor up to questions, there's been a number of installers that provided some images that were used in this presentation. I do want to say a thank you to Argon Solar for allowing us to use a numerous of theirs. And at this point, yeah, just would like to open the floor to questions. And I'll also say if there's any questions that you would like to have addressed but don't want to address in the webinar, your sales reps are always great sources of information. If they can't answer it, they'll forward it on, and we'll find somebody who can find the solution you're looking for. All right, at this time, I'm going to take a second while Cameron sees what questions we have available to us, and we'll address.
Excellent, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. And thanks, Dan, for that presentation. That was very thorough. It was good. We're getting a few questions coming through here, and I just want to start with one requesting to know, with the Piers and top beam, do you supply an I-beam used in between the 2 rows of modules?
All right, on that, no. HES, we as far as what we supply, it is a collection of the legs and the rails. The foundation, that the responsibility of that is actually going to be on you, the installer. We do, as I said, we have a document put together on how to, on a built-up beam, built-up wood beam, or a specification for, I think it's a 6x6 or an 8x8, depending on the span you're looking at. But no, we're not your metal supplier. You're going to find that locally for less than we would be supplying it to you anyways. And also as far as speccing an I-beam for your spans, that's not something that we have available at the moment. But we can see what projects come up and what we can do to address at that time.
Good. Can you show a close-up of the clamp hardware?
I'm assuming that's our mid clamps and our end clamps is what we're talking about here. So what I'm going to do, bear with me for a second here. I'm just going to take a quick second to hunt for that. Yeah, just be a moment while my computer catches up here. Yeah, just bear with me for a moment. Okay, so let's start with this. What I'm going to do, so these aren't the mids, but we are going to get to the mids shortly here. These are our two feet that come both, there's 2 that come for the front leg, 2 that come for the back leg, and the fasteners to hold them together. We also have, this is the Splice Bar. As I said, there's 4 of these that come with your kit. They're going to be used for adjacent racking if you're going to make any arrays larger than 8 modules. This is our SMEG. It's our mid clamp with our integrated bonding, and the T-bolt that you've all come to know and love to fit into the fast rack rails. The pivot plate. These are all these are all M8 T-bolts designed to fit into the slot in our HD rail, and of course a pivot, a single 2-inch by 1/2-inch bolt which goes right through our HD rail back legs to give you a point to pivot about. This is a slim L-foot, and I think sorry, bear with me. I'm going to try to find. That's the one I was looking for. That is our universal end clamp, designed for every one of our 60. Well, sorry, for every one of our 60 and 72 cell modules that HES supplies, and again with the T-bolt to fit into our rails, HD, UL, or UL.
Excellent, thank you. And we still have a few more questions coming in here, folks, so we'll get to each of them as we go. The next question is in regards to sloped installations, say on the side of a fairly steep hill. Which foundation type have you found to be most effective?
On those ones, we've found definitely either the concrete piers or the helical piles, depending, of course, what you're anchoring into, what your soil conditions are like. They give you the versatility to make a level starting point. So longer downslope legs, shorter or longer piers on the downslope, shorter piers on the upslope to get a flat level ground to work with. Same idea with screw pile, is you can just leave it longer at the front, shorter in the back, and of course, and from that gives you an artificial level ground to start with. There is for very steep terrain where something like trying to create an artificial level may not be feasible. If that comes up, if you come across a project that needs to have a custom built leg, I'd suggest giving your sales rep a call directly, and we'll see what we can do as far as a little bit of design work and come up with a custom back leg for you. In that, we'd have to address that on a case by case or project basis. Yeah, I think that's probably the way I would go on a sloped terrain.
Thank you. Okay, for the concrete, for the pre-built concrete blocks, would they work without being below the frost line in the ground, just on top of the soil, or would that not shift the frost and put stress on the structure?
So with that, we have done some research into this as far as the using a concrete ballast on what's been considered a zero capacity soil, so over top of landfills or what have you, where you don't have the soil capacity to actually drive bury piers or drive helical piles. There will be some settling, and unfortunately, because every soil condition is slightly different, we have sorry, pardon me, just going to grab some water here for a moment. Pardon me. So with that, by not having the foundations down below the frost line, what you're doing, you're getting away from that by having the distributed load. There will be some settling, but from the calculations and research we've done, it's shouldn't be sufficient to create any wobble in your array. If you are concerned about that, what we'd recommend is actually is unfortunately digging and backfilling. If you're in a condition or area that you're concerned about settling because of frost or soil conditions.
Okay. With the pre-built concrete blocks, would work without being, sorry, I'm on the wrong question, sorry. We provide a maximum expected foot loading due to wind, etc., for the purpose of selecting or designing the foundations. The Lego block method, though convenient, appears to be excessive in terms of overall weight.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you on that one. The benefit to that is they're readily available, cheap, and easy to transport. Yes, from most locations in Canada, a 2 foot by 2 foot by 4 foot block is excessive, and a 2.5 by 2.5 by 5 is usually way over the top for anywhere other than next to a lake with quite a significant prevailing wind. So yeah, while I definitely agree that the magnitude of ballast being recommended in the Lego blocks is high, it's the cheap and easily accessible. I will actually point out at this point, we do have a ballast foundation guideline available on our website, which if you did not want to use these precast concrete blocks and wanted to get your own smaller blocks formed, we do actually have dimensions and recommendations based on the site-specific wind load and, of course, the shape of the array. On that, it is on our website, and if you can't find it, give your rep a shout. They can point you in the right direction or send you a copy.
Right on. We've got 2 or 3 more questions here, folks. Dan, thanks for answering all these, and everybody, thanks for the questions as well. Once the mount is installed, can the client move the angle?
Okay, so we're talking about. I'm assuming we're talking about seasonable adjustments at this point in time, and with that, the answer to that is it is possible. But this is not a typical mount that I would consider a seasonable adjustable racking system. This is designed. The idea behind the design is to set it at a tilt angle that is site specific for a year-round production, and then leave it. I know we've had a lot of people that like the idea of the seasonable adjustment, going from a 30-degree tilt to a 60-degree tilt. Summer versus winter, and we've actually done a bunch of hunting, a bunch of research on this, and I even actually was on Friday last week had the same question posed, and between the 2 different adjustments, there was an average of 12 minutes per day in production change. So it was a 4% based on the size of the array. It was a 4% change in the system output, which on a large system that can be a substantial amount. But for the cost to get people there to actually adjust the system, it's something that each site's going to have to determine themselves. Gotten a little bit away from the question, but the gist of it is it can be adjusted, but not easily.
Excellent. And this was just a comment from one of the installers, and they're mentioning how they had a hillside array, and they had the hillside actually dug out to level.
Fantastic. That's a great solution for doing it. Of course, it depends on what your soil condition or what your hill is made out of. Blasting rock, if it's out here on the west coast, it's not likely going to be happen. Versus somewhere which has deeper soil that you can actually dig out.
And we have one final question. If anybody else has questions, or please feel free to email us. And Dan or our sales team will be more than happy to help you out as far as getting those drawings and layouts. More than happy, and as well, there's obviously the material builder online for you to use it at your convenience. And this one, the final question, is also about leveling. Is there any adjustment on the legs for leveling purposes?
On that, what I'll do is I'm actually just going to jump back here to the image of the Sorry, bear with me for a moment. Went too far. Almost there. On that, the legs themselves, there is no height adjustment on the legs. So if between your in this case, I'll just say your precast concrete blocks, if they're not perfectly on level ground, you will have to find a way to create your own height offset, either using threaded rod or wedge anchors that have an exposed thread that allows you to adjust the height that way. With that, if there is a small amount of discrepancy between the height of the feet or of your foundation, the panel rails, the way they are mounted to the front leg. Let me find you an image here. That's not going to work for us, but with our L feet being the connection point between the front leg and the panel rails, they do have about an inch and a half of vertical adjustment for leveling, the same leveling that you do on your flush roof installs. This is also available, of course, on these to help level out the array. So the feet themselves attaching to the ground, they don't have any built-in height adjustment, but the entire system has the ability to adjust the panel rail height.
Excellent, Dan. Thank you so much for your presentation today. That was obviously well received. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have questions, give us a ring, give us an email. Always available from 8 to 8 nationally. And yeah, happy Halloween and have a good one. Thank you again. Cheers.